a US infantry squad in Normandy. 1 second after a soft click, about 10 meters from a hedgerow gap, either 3 men go down or the whole advance stops cold. They drop flat and scream a warning. The mine still leaps to waist height and turns the lane into a storm of steel. Stay with this, and you'll see how a coffee can of fragments bent tactics, medicine, and morale across entire fronts. Germany introduced the shrapnel mine in 1935, first as the S-MY.35 and later the S-MY.42. It appeared early in Poland and France, then tore lanes through the desert belts at El Alamein before waiting in the bocage of Normandy. By the time Allied troops hit the Channel coast in June 1944, German pioneer units had buried or wired in roughly 6 million mines along the Atlantic Wall. Among them sat the bounding type Allied troops nicknamed Bouncing Betty, compact and patient, triggered by pressure on prongs or a tug on tripwire. The mine worked in 2 steps: a small charge threw the canister up to about waist height, then the main charge detonated in open air. No soil to swallow the blast, just fragments in every direction, at the height where men move and breathe. Dusk settles, and the squad pushes through a gap cut in a hedgerow. Boots slide in clay, gear clinks, an NCO lifts a hand to slow the file. A faint metallic click snaps the air. The point man locks in place, weight on his right foot, eyes down, breath trapped. Down! Rips through the lane. Men fall, some into the ditch, some into the brush, packs thumping, rifles scraping wood. From the soil, a cylinder pops with a cough, arcing to the height of a man's belt. The sound is small, almost casual, and then the main charge detonates. The hedgerow explodes with a ring of splinters and steel. Leaves shred, bark spits, helmets thud as fragments lash the lane in every direction. One man in the second file feels a burning punch in his thigh and rolls into the ditch. Another takes a fragment along the side and crawls farther, keeping his body aligned with the ground, ears ringing. The point man pitches sideways, not from the mine he triggered, but from pieces ricocheting through branches. He clutches his midsection and gasps, trying to draw air as the medic scrambles. The medic crawls on his belly, conscious of tripwire risk, and counts casualties by sound. He clamps a tourniquet high and tight, presses dressings hard into entry wounds, and keeps his head low while calling for engineers. Second by second, the squad leader holds everyone down. He wants to pull the wounded, but movement inside a suspected mine strip invites a second disaster. A German machine gun barks 2 bursts from beyond the next hedgerow. The squad's flanks answer with short returns, but nobody rises into a tripwire curtain. Engineers arrive on their bellies, faces streaked with mud. They spot wire low in the grass, locate the danger points, and begin marking a narrow, safe lane. Flares swing up from the German side, bleaching the lane white. Shadows vanish, and every man tries to be smaller than the ground. Under the light, the medic rolls a casualty, feels for a pulse, and checks the thigh tourniquet again. He tags another man for urgent evacuation and keeps whispering simple orders. Breathe slow, stay with me. A rifle grenade arcs into the next hedge and pops. The gun falls silent for a heartbeat. Then a new rattle starts farther left, pushing the squad to rethink the exit. With 2 lanes marked, white tape fluttering low, the leader signals the litter teams. They lift carefully, feet searching, and move measured centimeters towards the rear gap. Another click whispers from the verge to their right, and everyone freezes again. This time, the canister sputters and fails to launch. A dud, smothered by damp earth or sheer luck. They resume, stepping into each other's footprints. Behind them, the hedgerow sways. and the air still tastes like metal. Only after the last man clears the tape does anyone stand to a full crouch. The lane is open again, but it feels narrower now, and every bootfall becomes a decision. At the rear, a sergeant looks at an engineer's palm, streaked with soil and a hair-thin scratch. He nods once, understanding how close the whole platoon came to losing the night. Here is what made that cylinder so effective. Designers packed the body with around 360 steel balls, or cut scrap in later wartime variants, arranged to throw fragments in a full 360-degree ring. The commonly cited effective kill zone ran out to about 20 meters. Hazardous pieces could reach much farther, sometimes out toward 100 meters in unlucky arcs. Triggering could come from a boot nudging the prongs, a knee brushing a wire, or a careless touch in the wrong spot. A mine detector could find metal, but it could not tell a squad what fuse lurked ahead, or whether tripwires crisscrossed the scrub. The delay from activation to airburst was short, fractions of a second to about 1 second. So reaction windows were almost theoretical. Manuals told troops to drop flat on click, gambling that fragments would pass overhead. But a man needed time to process the sound, beat the freeze, and get down without planting an elbow or knee on something worse. Even then, fragments traveled outward and downward in a cone, and a body hugging the ground inside the inner radius was still in trouble. Spacing and discipline partly blunted the damage. Patrols spread out, moved in staggered files, and forced themselves to step where the man ahead had just stepped. Driven by discipline, not bravery, German sighting compounded the effect. Pioneer teams laced obvious gaps, the far side of low walls, and the lee of hedgerows where men naturally sheltered from fire. Machine gun nests sat just beyond mined approaches, so a squad that paused on click offered the gunner his moment. Mortar crews watched for bunching and walked rounds onto any knot of men stalled by a mine. In North Africa, mines created belts that turned armor and infantry into canalized targets for guns. In Normandy's bocage, they slowed assaults to a foot-by-foot grind. Either way, the bounding airburst multiplied the defenders' reach without a man on a trigger. Aid men moved the worst cases first, and the company commander called for a new approach route, while engineers marked the gap for the next unit. Records vary on the exact delay men described in the moment, but the debrief showed a near-instant airburst and a textbook omnidirectional spray. The wounded went back under escort, and the squad took a knee while the lane stayed under watch. The episode mattered because it stopped momentum more surely than a single gun. A tiny cylinder fractured a timetable, forced fields of fire to reset, and pushed every man to weigh one step against another. New routes, new spacing rules, and new tools followed. Flail tanks, line charges, and stricter probing drills became standard escorts for infantry pushes through belts that could otherwise freeze a battalion. 6 million mines buried along one coastline, a single canister the size of a coffee can, and units that couldn't move until engineers marked a path through the quiet. That is how a defender buys time with metal and silence. For the next deep dive into the weapons and decisions that defined these seconds on the ground, subscribe now.